Jake Sullivan sat in his chair and watched the alien delegates argue about trade routes. He had been Earth's voice in this room for 8 long years. The Galactic Council chamber was huge and golden, with seats arranged in a perfect circle. Each species had their own section with fancy decorations that showed how important they thought they were. The Zephyrians looked like tall birds with silver feathers and sharp beaks. Their delegate was speaking now, making clicking sounds that the translator turned into words. The humans think they can protect shipping lanes with their tiny fleet, he said, and other delegates made sounds that Jake knew meant laughter. Perhaps they should focus on learning proper space navigation before offering security services. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The human fleet wasn't tiny anymore, but none of these aliens bothered to check their facts. They still saw Earth as a new species that had stumbled into space 50 years ago. They remembered when human ships could barely make it to the next star system without breaking down. The Altarian delegate stood up next. The Altarians looked like purple octopuses with too many arms and eyes that never seemed to blink. We propose new safety regulations for all shipping in sectors 7 through 9, she announced. Her voice was smooth and cold. These regulations will ensure that only properly equipped vessels can operate in these vital trade areas. Jake pulled up the regulations on his tablet. As he read through them, his anger grew. The requirements were written specifically to exclude human ships. The power output minimums were set just above what Earth's newest cruisers could produce. The scanning equipment requirements included technology that only 3 species in the Council manufactured. The fuel purity standards would force human ships to buy expensive additives from Altarian refineries. This is clearly targeted at human shipping, Jake said, standing up. His voice echoed in the big chamber. These requirements serve no safety purpose. They're designed to push Earth's merchants out of profitable trade routes. The Volari Empire's representative laughed. The Volari looked like armored lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their delegate was huge, even sitting down. Ambassador Sullivan, your paranoia is showing again, he said in a voice like grinding rocks. Perhaps if human vessels were built to proper standards, they would meet proper requirements. Jake had heard this same dismissive tone hundreds of times. Every proposal Earth made was too aggressive or too weak. Every human achievement was lucky or stolen. Every human concern was paranoia or inexperience. He looked around the chamber at faces that ranged from bored to amused to actively hostile. Lisa Parker, his aide, passed him a note. She was young and still believed that patience and facts could change minds. The note said that 3 more species had agreed to support the Altarian regulations. Jake crumpled the paper. I have evidence of systematic discrimination, Jake said, activating the chamber's main display. Charts and graphs appeared showing trade volume, shipping incidents, and inspection records. Human vessels are inspected at 3 times the rate of other species. Human cargoes are delayed for additional screening that other species never face. Human colonies are charged higher docking fees at stations they helped build. The Nexari chairman, Veltar, barely looked at the display. The Nexari had pale blue skin and large black eyes that made them look wise. Though Jake had learned, they were just as petty as everyone else. The Council appreciates Earth's concerns, Veltar said in the tone adults used with complaining children. However, this matter requires further study. I move to table this discussion until our next quarterly session. Jake felt something break inside his chest. Further study meant never. The quarterly session was 4 months away, and there would be another excuse then. There always was. The vote was quick and predictable. 9 species voted to table the discussion. 2 abstained. Only the Mendari, who were almost as powerless as humans, voted against the motion. But the worst was yet to come. The Volari delegate stood again, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber floor. "Since we are discussing colonial matters, the Volari Empire has an announcement," he said. "Under Section 12 of the Ancient Territories Accord, we are claiming eminent domain over the Tau Ceti system. The human settlements there will be relocated to make room for a strategic mining operation." Jake's blood turned cold. Tau Ceti had 60,000 human colonists. Families had been living there for 20 years. Children had been born there who had never seen Earth, and mining rights belonged to humanity under 3 different treaties. But the Ancient Territories Accord was older and written by species that controlled the Council. "You can't do this," Jake said, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. "Those people have lived there for 2 decades. They've built homes, schools, hospitals. Compensation will be provided," the Volari delegate said, waving one clawed hand. "The Empire is not unreasonable. We will give the humans 6 months to evacuate, 6 months to abandon everything they had built, 6 months to become refugees in their own galaxy." Jake looked around the chamber again, hoping to see sympathy or outrage on alien faces. Instead, he saw calculation, boredom, and in some cases satisfaction. The Zephyrian delegate made more clicking sounds. "Perhaps this will teach the humans not to overextend themselves," the translator said. "Colony placement should be left to species with proper survey capabilities." That was when Jake realized the truth he had been fighting against for 8 years. It didn't matter how reasonable he was. It didn't matter how much evidence he presented. It didn't matter how many compromises Earth made. These species would never see humans as equals. They saw Earth as a useful source of raw materials and cheap labor, nothing more. Jake stood up slowly. The chamber grew quiet as delegates noticed his movement. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his diplomatic credentials. The folder was made of real leather from Earth, something he had always been proud of. It contained 8 years of certificates, authorizations, and formal recognitions. He walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps loud in the silence. The main podium rose from the floor in front of the chairman's seat. Jake placed his credentials on the smooth surface. "The United Earth Federation hereby withdraws from all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, effective immediately," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We will handle our own affairs from now on," the chamber exploded. Some delegates laughed, thinking this was another human tantrum. Others started talking quickly to their aides, already calculating what this meant for trade agreements and defense pacts. A few looked genuinely worried that Chairman Veltar banged his gavel, a human invention that the Council had adopted years ago. "Ambassador Sullivan, you cannot simply withdraw from the galactic community," he said. "Earth needs the Council's protection and trade networks." Jake looked at the chairman for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "We really don't." Lisa gathered their papers and followed Jake toward the chamber exit. Behind them, the noise grew louder as delegates realized this wasn't a negotiating tactic. Jake didn't look back. He had spent 8 years trying to make these aliens respect humanity. Now he was done trying. Admiral Kate Morgan received the message while standing on the bridge of the UES Sentinel. The ship was patrolling the outer rim of human space, keeping pirates away from merchant vessels. She read Jake Sullivan's report twice before calling. Her communications officer. "Send priority orders to all diplomatic missions," she said. "Full withdrawal, effective immediately. All embassy staff are to return to Earth within 72 hours. The young officer looked confused. "Admiral, that's 47 different worlds. Some of our people are in deep space assignments." Kate looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. She had been expecting this order for months. The politicians on Earth had been patient with the Galactic Council for too long. "Then they better start moving fast," she said. "News of humanities." Withdrawal spread through the galaxy faster than the fastest ships. On Altair Prime, the purple-skinned trade ministers gathered in emergency session. They pulled up economic reports that made their tentacles writhe with worry. 30% of their rare earth elements came from human mining operations. The medical supplies that kept their colonies healthy were manufactured on Earth. Entertainment industry relied on human creativity and stories. Perhaps we were too hasty with those shipping regulations, one minister said, but it was already too late. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the reaction was different. The bird-like aliens celebrated in their crystal cities, making harsh music with their beaks and claws. Their leaders appeared on public broadcasts, declaring victory over human arrogance. The humans have shown their true nature, announced their prime speaker. When they could not dominate the council, they took their toys and went home. The galaxy is better without their chaos and noise. But even as they celebrated, Zephyrian merchants were quietly calculating losses. Human entertainment systems were popular among their youth. Human food preservation techniques had revolutionized their agriculture. Human medical research had eliminated 3 diseases that had plagued their species for centuries. Captain Ben Harris commanded the cargo ship U.S. Providence. He had been loading supplies at a space station when the withdrawal order came through. The station master, a 6-armed hexapod, tried to convince him to stay. "Surely this is just politics," the alien said, waving his multiple hands. "Trade must continue. My station depends on human freight." Ben sealed the last cargo bay and powered up his engines. "Politics is exactly what this is about," he said. And politics just changed. Within days, the effects began showing. The Kithara, a peaceful species that looked like walking trees, sent panicked messages to anyone who would listen. Human security forces had protected their merchant fleets for 15 years. Without that protection, raiders from the outer dark were already moving toward Kithara trade routes. The Mandari Republic faced a different crisis. Their agricultural worlds depended on human-designed farming equipment and fertilizers. The machines were breaking down, and replacement parts were no longer available. Their food production would drop by half within 6 months. Dr. Amy Foster worked in her laboratory on Earth, surrounded by samples and research data. She had spent 10 years developing treatments for alien diseases, sharing her discoveries freely with any species that needed help. Now her assistant brought her a stack of requests for medical assistance. "The Rigel plague is spreading again," the assistant said. "The Altarians are asking for our vaccine formula." Amy looked at the requests and set them aside. "We're no longer in the business of giving away our research," she said. "If they want our medicine, they can negotiate for it like any other trade good." The assistant looked shocked. "But people will die." Amy's expression was hard. "People have been dying on human colonies for years, while the Council ignored our requests for help. Maybe it's time they understood what it feels like." General Roy Baker sat in a secure conference room deep beneath Earth's surface. The walls were lined with screens showing military assets across human space. Ships were moving in patterns that would have worried the Galactic Council if they had been paying attention. "Operation Homecoming is ahead of schedule," reported his aide, Colonel Pete Wright. "All classified installations have been evacuated. Our people are pulling back to the core systems." Roy nodded. The withdrawal looked like retreat to outside observers, but it was actually consolidation. Humanity was pulling its scattered forces into a tight defensive formation. When the aliens realized what they had lost, they would try to take it by force. Roy intended to be ready. The Volari Empire moved quickly to occupy the Tau Ceti system. Their warships arrived, expecting to find human colonists packing their belongings in defeat. Instead, they found empty settlements and mysterious metal structures that had not been there the week before. Commander Vextar led the Volari boarding party into the main human settlement. The buildings were intact but abandoned. Children's toys lay scattered in the streets. Gardens grew wild without tenders. It felt like the humans had simply vanished. "Search everything," Vextar ordered his troops. "Find their mining equipment and industrial facilities." But the mining equipment was gone. The industrial facilities had been stripped down to their foundations. Even the power generators had been removed. The humans had taken everything valuable and left the Volari an empty shell dot as they searched the settlement. Vextar noticed the metal structures. They looked like communication arrays or sensor towers. His technical experts could not identify their purpose. When they tried to approach for a closer look, warning signals started broadcasting on all frequencies. "This area is now under human protection," the signal said in perfect Volari. "Unauthorized vessels will be removed," Vextar laughed. "Human protection? The humans are gone." The automated defense systems that emerged from hidden bunkers disagreed. Back on Earth, President Claire Thompson addressed the United Earth Federation Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every human world and colony. Their faces showed worry, anger, and determination in equal measure. "For 50 years, we have tried to find our place in the galactic community," she said. "We followed their rules, accepted their insults, and compromised our interests for the sake of peace. That era is over." The representatives listened in silence as she outlined the new policy. Earth would honor existing contracts with species that treated humans fairly. They would defend human territory with whatever force was necessary. They would share their technology and knowledge only with partners who offered real friendship. "The galaxy has shown us what they think we are worth," President Thompson concluded. "Now we will show them what we are really capable of." Admiral Morgan received reports from across human space. Trade convoys were arriving safely at Earth and the major colonies. Military assets were in position. The industrial facilities that had been abandoned on frontier worlds were actually being relocated to more secure systems. The aliens thought humanity was running away. They would learn soon enough that humans were simply changing the rules of the game. On the bridge of the UES Sentinel, Kate looked at a message from Jake Sullivan. He was on his way back to Earth, ready to help build whatever came next. His 8 years of diplomatic failure had taught them valuable lessons about their alien neighbors. "Navigation, set course for Earth," Kate ordered. "It's time to go home and prepare for what's coming." 6 months had passed since Jake Sullivan walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. The galaxy was starting to understand that humanity's withdrawal was not a temporary tantrum. It was a permanent change that affected everything. The Volari Empire had learned this lesson the hard way. Their occupation force at Tau Ceti found themselves under constant attack from weapons they could not see or understand. Commander Vextar had lost 3 ships trying to establish mining operations. The automated defense systems that protected the abandoned human settlements were more advanced than anything in the Volari military. The humans left ghosts behind, Vextar reported to his superiors. "Every time we try to move equipment, something destroys our transports. Every time we send troops to investigate, they disappear. Our sensors show nothing but our soldiers are gone." The Volari High Command was not pleased. They had expected easy victory over a handful of human colonists. Instead, they faced an invisible enemy that struck without warning and vanished without trace. Dr. Amy Foster worked in her sealed laboratory on Earth, developing treatments for diseases that affected dozens of species across the galaxy. But now, her research stayed on Earth. The Rigel plague had broken out on 7 different worlds, and the alien governments were desperate for human medical help. The Altarian trade minister arrived at Earth's orbital station with a convoy of ships loaded with rare metals and technological components. He requested an immediate meeting with human medical authorities. Instead, he was told to submit a formal trade proposal and wait in line like everyone else. "This is outrageous," the minister complained to the station commander. "Our people are dying. We need the plague vaccine immediately." Commander Lisa Parker, who had once been Jake Sullivan's aide, looked at the desperate alien with cold eyes. "Your government helped pass regulations designed to destroy human shipping," she said. "When our colonies faced similar crises, you voted to ignore our requests for help. Now you understand how that feels." The Altarian minister offered increasingly valuable trade goods, but Earth's response remained the same. Medical assistance would be provided only to species that signed new partnership agreements. These agreements required fair treatment of human citizens and equal access to alien markets. "You cannot hold medicine hostage," the minister said. Lisa smiled without warmth. "We're not holding anything hostage. We're simply choosing our trading partners more carefully." The Zephyrians discovered the cost of their celebration when their navigation systems began failing throughout the galaxy. For decades, human engineers had maintained the beacon networks that guided ships through hyperspace. These beacons required constant adjustment and repair. Without human maintenance, they started broadcasting incorrect information that Captain Rexif commanded a Zephyrian merchant vessel that got lost in hyperspace when a beacon gave wrong coordinates. His ship emerged 3 light years from his intended destination, in a region controlled by the Outer Dark Raiders. The pirates destroyed his vessel and killed his crew before help could arrive. Similar incidents happened across Zephyrian trade. Routes: ships arrived late, got lost, or emerged from hyperspace in dangerous locations. The Zephyrian government demanded that humans resume beacon maintenance immediately. The human response was delivered by an automated message system navigation. Services are available to certified trading partners. Please submit your application through proper diplomatic channels. But the Zephyrians had no diplomatic channels with Earth anymore. They had celebrated when humanity left the Galactic Council. Now they were paying the price for that celebration. The Mendari Republic faced complete economic collapse. Their farming equipment was breaking down without replacement parts. Their food production had already dropped by 30%. Riots were starting in the cities as people fought over shrinking supplies. President Corrales of the Mendari sent secret messages to Earth begging for help. The Mendari had been the only species to consistently support human proposals in the Galactic Council. They had voted against tabling Jake Sullivan's discrimination evidence. They deserved better treatment than the species that had mocked humanity. The human response surprised everyone. Within days, cargo ships arrived at Mendari worlds loaded with farming equipment, medical supplies, and food. But these ships carried Earth's new flag, not the Galactic Council's symbol of unified commerce. The Free Species Alliance welcomes the Mendari Republic as our first partner, announced President Thompson in a broadcast that reached across the galaxy. Together, we will build a better future based on mutual respect and fair dealing. The Galactic Council chamber on Kepler Prime was nearly empty during their emergency session. Half the member species had sent only junior representatives. Several chairs sat completely vacant as governments focused on their own crises. Instead of council business. Chairman Veltar looked around the sparse gathering with growing desperation. "We must address the human situation," he said. "Their withdrawal is causing chaos throughout civilized space." The Altarian representative was too sick to attend the meeting. The Rigel plague had reached Altair Prime, and their government was focused on preventing total societal breakdown. The Zephyrian delegates spent most of the session coordinating rescue operations for their lost merchant fleets. Only the Valari seemed unaffected, but even they were dealing with unexpected problems. Their mining operations in human territory were failing. Equipment disappeared overnight. Workers vanished from their barracks. Cargo ships exploded for no apparent reason. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach to the humans," suggested the delegate from the Hexapod Consortium. "They clearly had capabilities we did not recognize." The Valari representative made a sound like grinding stone. "The Empire does not negotiate with terrorists," he declared. "These attacks on our legitimate operations will not be tolerated." But the attacks continued. Every day brought new reports of Volari losses in human space. Their military commanders were baffled by an enemy they could not find or fight. Intelligence officer Nina Cross worked from a hidden facility on Earth, coordinating information networks that spanned the galaxy. She had been building these networks for 3 years, preparing for the day when humanity would need to operate outside the Galactic Council systems. Her screens showed the results of that preparation. Human assets were withdrawing to fortified positions. Critical technologies were being moved to secure locations. Trade relationships were being restructured to bypass Council oversight. "The aliens still think this was an emotional decision," she reported to General Baker. "They expect us to come back begging for readmission to their club." General Baker studied the tactical displays showing human military positions. "How long before they realize the truth?" Nina smiled. "Some of them are starting to understand. The smart ones are already sending secret messages asking for separate negotiations. The stupid ones are still talking about forcing us back to the table." The Kithara sent such a message, begging Earth to resume protecting their trade routes. Pirates from the outer dark were destroying their merchant fleets faster than they could build new ships. Their tree-like forms were not suited for combat, and they had relied on human security for decades. Earth's response was swift and decisive. Human warships appeared in Kithara space within days, but they flew under the banner of the free species. Alliance. The Kithara were invited to join the new organization as full partners, not as clients seeking protection. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. Humanity was not retreating from galactic affairs. They were creating a new system with new rules. Species that wanted human cooperation would have to earn it through fair dealing and mutual respect. The old system of condescension and exploitation was ending. A new era was beginning, with Earth at its center. Chairman Valtar received a simple message from President Thompson. "The Galactic Council is welcome to solve galactic problems. Humanity will solve human problems." 1 year after Jake Sullivan placed his diplomatic credentials on the Council podium, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Council met in emergency session almost every week, but fewer species attended each time. Their grand chamber felt hollow with so many empty seats. The Mendari Republic had officially withdrawn from the Council 3 months earlier. Their announcement shocked the remaining members because the Mendari had been founding members of the galactic government. Now they flew the blue and silver flag of the Free Species Alliance alongside Earth's banner. President Corrales of the Mendari addressed his people from the capital city the humans had helped rebuild after plague and famine nearly destroyed it. "The Galactic Council failed us when we needed help most," he said. "Earth and the Free Species Alliance showed us what true partnership means." The Hexapod Consortium was next to leave. Their 6 armed merchants had built trade networks across dozens of systems, but those networks were collapsing without human protection and maintenance. Pirates raided their convoys weekly. Navigation beacons failed regularly. Their profits had dropped by 70% when Hexapod representatives arrived at Earth's orbital station to negotiate joining the Alliance. They brought detailed intelligence about Galactic Council military capabilities and strategic planning. It was their way of proving loyalty to their new partners. The Kithara had joined the Alliance months earlier, bringing their agricultural expertise and peaceful nature to the growing coalition. The tree-like beings were natural diplomats who helped other species understand Earth's new approach to galactic politics. But the real shock came when the Nexari Collective announced they were considering withdrawal from the council they had helped create. Chairman Veltar himself was facing calls for his resignation from his own government. "The humans have outmaneuvered us completely," admitted Veltar's chief advisor during a private meeting. "They spent years preparing for this moment while we dismissed them as primitive upstarts." Colonel Steve Grant crouched in the ruins of what had been New Phoenix Colony on Tau Ceti. The Valari Occupation Force had tried to establish mining operations here, but they had not expected human resistance. Grant's colonial militia was actually a disguised Earth military unit equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. The Valari never saw them coming. Grant's soldiers used stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. They carried weapons that could penetrate Valari armor like it was paper. Most importantly, they understood human terrain better than any invading force. "Target acquired," whispered Sergeant Mary Clark through the comm system. She was positioned on a hillside overlooking the Valari command post. Her rifle could punch through starship hull plating, and the alien commander below had no idea Death was watching. Grant studied the enemy positions through his scope. 47 Valari soldiers were trying to secure the mining complex the humans had abandoned. They had set up defensive positions using standard Galactic Council military doctrine. That doctrine assumed enemies would attack in predictable patterns, using familiar weapons. "All units, execute on my mark," Grant said quietly. The attack lasted exactly 4 minutes. When it was over, the Valari command post was a burning wreck, and their soldiers were either dead or running for their ships. Grant's team vanished into the hills before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Commander Vextar received the report while orbiting Tau Ceti in his flagship. This was the 15th such attack in 3 months. His occupation force was being systematically destroyed by enemies he could not find or fight. "Sir, perhaps we should withdraw," suggested his aide, a young officer who had grown tired of writing casualty reports. Vextar slammed his clawed fist on the command console. "The Empire does not retreat from primitive humans," he snarled. But, privately, he was beginning to wonder if the humans were as primitive as everyone had believed. The Battle of Kepler Station changed everything. The station was a neutral trading post that served ships from dozens of species. It had been built with human engineering expertise and was maintained by human technical crews. When Earth withdrew those crews, the station's systems began failing. A coalition of Galactic Council species decided to seize the station by force and restore its operations using their own technology. They assembled a fleet of 30 warships from 6 different species. It should have been enough to overwhelm any human defense. Commander Helen Brooks waited for them with just 5 Earth vessels. Her ships were smaller than the alien fleet, but they carried weapons and shields that the Council species had never seen before. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who had been preparing for this fight for 3 years. "Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet," reported her communications officer. "Put it through," Helen said. The alien commander appeared on screen, a proud Altarian who wore the insignia of the Council's combined forces. "Human vessels, you are outnumbered 6 to 1, he announced. "Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law." Helen smiled coldly. "Galactic law no longer applies to human forces," she replied. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw before we open fire." The alien commander's tentacles writhed with indignation. "Impossible. Your primitive weapons cannot threaten our advanced fleet." Helen cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. "Show them how wrong they are." The human ships moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. They used thruster configurations that defied traditional physics and fired energy weapons that cut through Council shields like they were made of paper. Within minutes, Half the alien fleet was destroyed or disabled. The surviving enemy ships fled in panic, broadcasting warnings about human military capabilities that shocked governments across the galaxy. Earth had not just withdrawn from galactic politics. They had been secretly building a military force that could challenge anyone. The Zephyrian homeworld erupted in riots when their population learned the truth about their government's policies. For months, their leaders had claimed that humanity's withdrawal was proof of Earth's weakness. They had refused offers of medical aid during a plague outbreak, insisting that Zephyrian medicine was superior. Thousands died while their government maintained its pride. When the truth came out through leaked diplomatic communications, the Zephyrian people rose up in fury. They filled the crystal streets of their capital city, demanding their leaders resign and negotiate with Earth immediately. The Altarian economy collapsed completely when their manufacturing sector shut down. They had built their industry around rare elements that only human mining operations could provide efficiently. Without those materials, their factories went silent and millions of workers lost their jobs. Altarian trade ships arrived at Earth's borders daily, carrying desperate offers of tribute and apology. Most were turned away without even being allowed to dock. Earth was done accepting the scraps of respect that aliens offered when they needed something. Nina Cross watched all of this unfold from her intelligence center on Earth. Her screens showed the collapse of the old galactic order in real time. Species were abandoning the Council, joining the Free Species Alliance, or facing internal revolution from populations that blamed their leaders for losing human cooperation. The Volari Emperor has requested a personal meeting with President Thompson, she reported to the Earth Leadership Council. General Baker looked up from tactical reports showing the enemy's declining military position. What did we tell him? Nina smiled. That sovereign nations do not negotiate with occupying forces. We suggested he withdraw from human territory first, then we might consider talks. The Emperor's response had been a furious declaration that the Valari Empire would never bow to human demands. But his military commanders were already quietly pulling their forces back from the most dangerous positions. The galaxy was learning that humanity had never been the junior partner begging for acceptance. They had been the foundation that held the entire system together. Without Earth's cooperation, trade networks failed, security arrangements collapsed, and the careful balance of galactic politics fell apart. The species that had mocked human diplomacy were discovering what the universe looked like when humans stopped being diplomatic. 2 years after humanity ended all diplomacy with the Galactic Council, the old chamber on Kepler Prime stood empty. Dust covered the ornate seats where proud alien delegates had once dismissed human concerns. The golden walls that had witnessed centuries of galactic politics now echoed only with the footsteps of maintenance crews. The real center of galactic government had moved to Earth, in Geneva, where humans had once signed their first peace treaties. A new assembly hall welcomed representatives from across the galaxy. The Free Species Alliance had grown from 3 founding members to include 19 different civilizations. President Claire Thompson walked through the hall before the morning. Session began. Sunlight streamed through windows that looked out on snow-capped mountains and peaceful valleys. The contrast with the artificial grandeur of Kepler Prime was intentional. This was a place where beings came to work together, not to show off their importance. The Zephyrian delegation arrived early, their silver feathers bright in the morning light. Their new government had taken power after the riots that followed their plague crisis. The young prime speaker, Kexara, had spent months learning human customs and language as a sign of respect. President Thompson, Kexara said, bowing in. The human fashion, rather than the traditional Zephyrian display of wing spreading. My people are grateful for this opportunity to join civilized discourse. Claire nodded politely. The Zephyrians had earned their place here through genuine reform of their government and society. They had opened their historical archives to human scholars, revealed the truth about their past propaganda campaigns, and paid substantial reparations to human colonies they had harmed. The Altarian representative arrived next, looking tired and worn. The purple-skinned alien had spent 2 years negotiating the terms of his species' surrender. The Altarian hegemony had collapsed completely, replaced by a democratic federation that begged Earth for guidance in rebuilding their civilization. "The economic reports you requested," the Altarian said, offering a datapad to President Thompson. "Our recovery is proceeding exactly as your advisors predicted." It was strange to see former enemies acting with such deference, but Earth had learned to use power responsibly. The species that joined the Alliance were not conquered subjects. They were partners who had chosen cooperation over conflict. Ambassador Jake Sullivan entered the hall wearing the blue and silver uniform of the Free Species Alliance. His new title was Secretary of Interstellar Affairs, a position that gave him authority over diplomatic relations with every member species. The man who had once begged aliens for basic respect now shaped galactic policy. "Good morning, madam." "President," Jake said, "the morning briefings are ready for your review." Claire took the reports and scanned through them quickly. The Kithara were requesting assistance with a new agricultural project. The hexapods wanted help expanding their trade networks. The Mendari had discovered valuable mineral deposits and were asking for human expertise in extraction. These were the kinds of problems she preferred dealing with. Species asking for help rather than demanding submission. Partners working together rather than rivals fighting for dominance. The assembly session began with a moment of silence for the victims of the old system. Humans who had died in preventable accidents because aliens refused to share safety technology. Aliens who had suffered because their governments chose pride over practical cooperation. The silence reminded everyone why they were building something. Better. Former Chairman Veltar rose from his seat in the section reserved for individual petitioners. The Nexari leader had arrived on Earth 6 months earlier as a refugee, seeking asylum after his own people removed him from power. His pale blue skin looked gray with exhaustion and shame. "Honorable delegates," Veltar began, "I request permission to present new intelligence regarding the Volari Empire's remaining military assets." Jake looked to President Thompson, who nodded. Veltar had been providing valuable information about the old Council's secret operations. His cooperation was part of his attempt to earn forgiveness for his role in decades of anti-human policies. "The Empire maintains 3 hidden fleets in the Outer Rim," Veltar continued. "They are planning one final assault on human territory, believing they can force Earth back to the negotiating table through violence." General Roy Baker, attending the session via secure video link, leaned forward in his chair. "Numbers and positions?" Veltar provided detailed information about Volari fleet strength, supply lines, and strategic planning. It was clear that the Empire's military leaders had learned nothing from their previous defeats. They still believed that superior numbers could overcome human technological advantages. "Thank you for this intelligence," President Thompson said. "General Baker, please coordinate with our defense forces." The session continued with reports from member species about trade, exploration, and scientific research. The Mendari had made breakthrough discoveries in agricultural science. The hexapods had opened new shipping routes that reduced travel time between systems. The Kithara were teaching other species about sustainable development and environmental protection. This was what Jake had dreamed of during his years of frustrating council meetings. Real cooperation between equals working toward common goals. No species dominated others. No one's concerns were dismissed as unimportant. Problems were solved through compromise and mutual support. That the afternoon brought news of the Volari empires. Final collapse. Their hidden fleets had been detected and destroyed by human forces before they could launch their planned assault. The Empire's remaining worlds were declaring independence and requesting alliance membership. Emperor Grexmoor himself was dead, killed by his own guards when they learned he had squandered their civilization's future through his stubborn pride. "The last holdout has fallen," announced Admiral Kate Morgan from the bridge of the UES Sentinel. "Volari Prime is requesting humanitarian assistance and protection from pirates who are moving into their territory." President Thompson considered their request carefully. The Volari had caused more suffering than any other species in the Old Council. They had enslaved worlds, destroyed civilizations, and shown no mercy to anyone weaker than themselves. Many Alliance members wanted to let them face the consequences of their actions alone, but that was not the human way. Earth had learned that mercy was often more powerful than revenge. The species that received help when they least deserved became the most loyal partners. "Send medical supplies and security forces," President Thompson decided, "but make it clear that any future Volari government must earn its place in the galactic community through actions, not words." The Assembly voted to approve the humanitarian mission. Even species that had suffered under Volari oppression supported helping their former enemies. It was a sign of how much the galaxy had changed under human leadership. As the session ended, Jake walked with President Thompson toward her private office. Through the windows, they could see delegations from different species talking and laughing together in the gardens outside. Aliens who had been enemies for centuries were becoming friends under Earth's guidance. "Do you ever regret walking out of that council chamber?" President Thompson asked. Jake smiled and looked out at the peaceful scene. "Not for a second," he said. "We spent 8 years trying to fit into their system. Now we've built a better one." The new galaxy was not perfect. There were still pirates in the outer dark, conflicts between member species, and challenges that tested everyone's patience. But it was a galaxy where problems were solved through cooperation rather than domination, where strength was measured by the help you gave rather than the fear you inspired. In the assembly hall, maintenance crews were preparing for the next day's session. Representatives from across the galaxy would gather again to work on building a better future. The chamber would be full of voices speaking as equals, addressing problems together, and finding solutions that benefited everyone. Jake Sullivan called the session to order each morning with words that had become the Alliance's unofficial motto. "The chair recognizes all species as equals in this assembly. Let's get to work." And they did work, building a galaxy where humanity's greatest victory was not the defeat of their enemies, but the transformation of those enemies into friends.